and WNST.net. It is never the offseason around here. It's certainly not for this guy when it comes to the National Football League. It says so right in his Twitter name. You follow him out at Sirius XM. If you've spent any time at all up in Philadelphia, you know this guy. Adam Caplan, first time, long time around here for me. We see each other at Super Bowls and combines and owners' meetings and all that stuff, and always good to have you on. You know, I thought about you over the weekend. I was at Billy Joel up at the baseball stadium over the weekend, and half my other friends were at the Who over the weekend. So when I'm not up there in Philadelphia, I saw plenty of Eagle stuff, plenty of Bryce Harper stuff. But, for us here in Baltimore, this is the weirdest time because your quarterback, Joe Flacco, and I say that as Philly's native son, has left us. It's a very strange offseason with Weddle, Mosley, all these guys out of the building. I've been doing this a long time, Adam. I haven't seen this sort of transition with the Ravens franchise, not the least to mention Ozzie Newsome not picking the football players, right?
Yeah, look, it's Nestor, good to be with you today. Yeah, it is. If you just start with Eric DeCosta and Ozzie Newsome, the transition, certainly that's where you start. And then when you look at the way that they've built this football team, they're building it with a rookie, just as they did in 2008. I mean, you now look at Joe Flacco with the Broncos, and Lamar Jackson now is going to be the quarterback for the Ravens, so there's a changing of the quarterback. That's certainly historic now. I mean, you talk about it in over a decade, and lots of change in terms of the front office, the structure a little bit, that Eric will be making the calls, but he's got a lot of the same people, though, below him. We're still there. They've had some promotions, as you know, in recent weeks. But it's interesting to have Lamar Jackson now becomes the quarterback, and we're going to see. And I know there'll be some differences from what you saw last year with him. I don't know that they'll run quite as much. They're certainly going to run a lot, but it's going to be interesting to see how much Greg Roman. Now he's the full-time offensive coordinator. Let's see how much he gives them in terms of the pass game.
Adam, how do you feel about your quarterback running the linebackers? That's never been my prescription for how to do this, and I shivered every time. I mean, literally from the time he took the ball last year in Canton, Ohio, in the most meaningless football game of all time, and was running into linebackers. I just, it makes me feel differently. And if I'm running the team, I would definitely feel that way. This is a very risky proposition. It's a bit of a test tube for what they're trying to do here. It's an experiment because nobody's done it this way and been really successful.
Well, look, Michael Vick had some success, obviously, with the Falcons and Eagles. Steve Young had to change his game because he kept getting hurt, and Steve became just a guy who was just a running quarterback to a passer. And I think over time, Lamar is a high-character, hard worker from talking to people close to the situation. I think Greg Roman, who, by the way, is one of the best run game designers of the National Football League, I think Greg knows what he has right now. And over time, if Lamar handles everything he's been given, they'll give him more to do. And by the way, let's look at the draft. Marquise Brown, first-round pick, fastest receiver in the draft. Miles Boykin, third-round pick. They're telling you that at some point they're going to want to throw the football. They did add Michael Floyd in free agency, add some veteran depth, and you look at the tight ends. My goodness gracious, we had Hayden Hurst on with us a couple weeks ago on Sirius, and he talked about the weight gain that he had, which is probably going to help him. Nick Boyle signed a big contract to come back, and you know about Mark Andrews, who flashed late this season. So they're really they're looking much better at this point now in terms of young passing targets than they did at this point last season.
You like their offseason? I mean, it's been so, I don't want to say tumultuous, because you got a bunch of 30-something players. I don't know that Eric Weddle really believed he was coming back when he hung it up. I don't, C.J. Mosley never thought he was leaving, but they were always sort of prepared for the Jets or somebody to come in and offer that kind of money. But the transition part of this in this offseason has transformed the team. But the one thing that Bisciotti and Pittsburgh, New England, New Orleans, these franchises don't do is throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to the brains, right? So Harbaugh looked fired in November, sort of resuscitated in December, looked like they were going to deal him off and get draft picks, and he wanted to be somewhere else with all the hubbub and all the transition. And lo and behold, he's here. He seems, and I know you've known him for a long time, he seems very relaxed. There's a second go-round here for him, and stability. Right? I mean, Steve Bisciotti chose stability with everything other than what's going on the football field because there's been a lot of transition there.
Well, Harbs is still there. Eric DeCosta is still there. Joe Ortiz got his promotion. A lot of the same people that Eric and John have been with for many years are still there. And and Don Martindale knows their system. He runs their defense. They're able to go forward with this the right way because these guys know how to work with each other. I think continuity is actually very important. Guys know what the expectations are, and they know what they have to do when they get into work. And the good thing is they've really developed a lot. I wouldn't call it a very young roster, but young enough, whereas they could all grow together. And you see some of the new kids that we mentioned a couple minutes ago. Jalen Ferguson also, I know that they're excited at one of the third-round picks. And guess who's back? Pernell McPhee is back. And we're going to find out within Gerald McCoy probably within 24 hours where he's going to go. I heard his visit went very well. So
they spent on the back end. I mean, if they can figure the rest of it out, the ball shouldn't go over their head or late in games the way it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I like the back end. The thing, though, I do want to mention this. The one surprise that happened this offseason, it wasn't that they signed Earl Thomas. This was not a type of move that Ozzie Newsome had been making, these big splash free agency moves. With the guy, quite frankly, you really wonder, is he the same player? He is. He just turned 30 years old a couple weeks ago. He's coming off of a significant injury. But the fact of the matter is, clearly, based on their tape study, they think Earl Thomas is still a special football player. No one will ever question his leadership and his productivity. But this is the one thing I think your listeners should understand. Every general manager puts their imprint on when they come in. I think that move with Earl Thomas was a major move by DeCosta. Most people around the league did not see happening.
Adam Caplan is here. He is Caplan, NFL. Hey, by the way, I talked to Eric in Phoenix. He didn't see it happen in 10 hours earlier. Literally, he said, I was going to bed, and the next thing I know, at 2 o'clock in the morning, half my football team's gone. And, woke up in the morning. He said, I wasn't returning media calls because, I needed football players, And the Earl Thomas thing, look, a lot of things have happened, I think, in the division, too, right? Like, Pittsburgh is perceived to be weaker with all the tumult with Antonio Brown, maybe addition by subtraction. By the time you consider that, the money, what they went on with Le'Veon Bell last year. But this Cleveland thing, and I know you're at the owners' meetings and whatnot, sitting there with John Harbaugh, and they extended that thing 15 minutes. The last 30 minutes of that session was one reporter after another coming up asking John Harbaugh about the Cleveland Browns, right? This is not normal. It's not normal for me. And I keep punchlining around here, and certainly if I had your job talking NFL, all day, all night, the punchline would be, where will the Browns celebration be? Where will they start the parade? Because that's all I hear, and I know it's not even June yet, right? But we're going to be hearing about that until we don't. They really are the golden child of the offseason all of a sudden.
Nestor, for the first time in 2 decades, I think you could legitimately say the Browns are going to compete at a high level in the AFC North, barring any injuries.
Not you two. You're in on this too, Caplan.
No, I didn't say that. Look, I said that they're a legitimate contender for the division. I would say. But let's be honest. If you look at the roster, let's not even talk about the coaching. The roster is actually pretty good. Now there's some new players that have to fit in. Baker Mayfield now is a full-time starter. Let's see how he handles that. And you have to see how Odell Beckham Jr. not only plays, but how he handles himself day-to-day, week-to-week. But from an on-the-roster standpoint, their roster matches up very well with the rest of the division. But look, the games are not done on paper. They're done on the field. We'll see how it plays out.
Pittsburgh, we're always waiting for their demise around here. You know what I mean? We're in Baltimore. We want the 4-12 to come to Pittsburgh. Catch that last place flu one year. Look, the Bengals, everybody thinks they're an afterthought at this point. They're in the rebuild. But the Steelers always worry me, much like the Ravens or the there's a reload part of that, and there's sort of the, Illuminati and the mind frame that they go into this, and Ben Roethlisberger. I don't see them limping by the side of the road in this division. I never do.
Well, no, and I know from talking to them, they're so happy that the turmoil is done with. They could get back to what was happening a couple of years ago and just compete for the division. This is a team that, when you look at Mike Tomlin, head coach, he's a Super Bowl winner as a head coach, and they just want to kind of move on and stop dealing with the questions every day about, is this guy going to report? How's this situation being handled? They're not going to have to deal with that anymore, and they're glad to move on. And they'll be right there because Roethlisberger's still there. Juju Smith-Schuster's a really good, very talented young receiver. And wait till you see James Washington. He was their second-round pick last year. Didn't play a lot, had a great preseason and training camp. they're expecting big things from him at the wide receiver position.
Well, that's bad news for all of us around here. Adam Caplan can be found out at Sirius XM at 88 and 87, Fox Sports Radio 95.7 The Game. Anywhere they're doing Eagles, anywhere they're doing the National Football League, including Twitter, you can find him at Caplan. That's with a Caplan, NFL. All right, let's get on to the Eagles here because, I see your posts from time to time, and I think of you as the Philadelphia guy and all that, and I'm up there eating cheesesteaks and grabbing pretzels on the way out. I brought a pretzel home for my wife, and 2 days later it was gone. She said, "What happened to the pretzel?" I said, "I gave you a day to eat it. How long you want to let the pretzel sit here?" For the Eagles and winning a championship and seeing you and all the Eagles people I've known all these years have that moment and the aftermath of that, how did that season after go? And I would say more than that, the aftermath is I see the Eagles as a formidable franchise this year, next year, every year. I think there's a good operating structure. Now, all of a sudden, the door starts knocking from my boy Joe Douglas and Andy Weidel and, the rest of the brain trust, the purple brain trust that brought some of that stuff up there last year. And that's all a part of this as well. But I really feel like the Eagles have become this stable, cool place with interesting ownership and, all of the part of the emotional intelligence part that Chip Kelly didn't get right. Feels like they're really getting it right up there. My boy Schwartz, he's happy up there. Winning games, feeling like you can win another championship, but feeling like you can win a championship every year.
Yeah, Nestor, I would agree with you. I think when you talked about the emotional intelligence, I think that's the one issue Chip Kelly can never really connect with his players, and Doug Peterson does. And one of the biggest reasons why I'm doing this podcast I'm doing for WIP and Philly and Radio.com is because the fan base, when this team is really, really special, which I think they are now, that this roster right now for the Eagles is probably better than when they won the Super Bowl if everybody's healthy, including number 11, the quarterback Carson Wentz. They're just set up right. I think you outlined this very well. From the front office to Harry Roseman, Joe Douglas, Andy Weidel, everyone that Joe has brought in, they just do things the right way, and it's really reflected on the field. And the thing that makes Joe really, really good is Joe brought in, and not only the type of people that he wanted to work with them, he brought in a mindset of how they'll draft football players. They want tough, smart football players. They don't have to be the best athlete in the world. They've got to love football. And that's the thing that's in their building. There's no question about it.
I'm a historian. You're a historian. I think about Johnny U and Earl Morrill around here and, I guess the Hostetler, Sims and all that. In the aftermath of all this, and I know Nick Foles had an incredible tragedy this week. And, look, I was at the team party the night he walked in there after winning the Super Bowl and acted like the 54th guy on the roster, right? Literally, right? And it's the kind of guy he was. That's been an interesting balance in all of this and emotional intelligence and a greedy society and all of that two quarterbacks, a guy could get hurt, another guy can win a championship. Boy, Nick Foles just seems like one of the really special cats there's ever been. And I don't know they'll ever build a statue for him there, right? But he was the guy that won it for him. And there won't be another act, right? He had a little bit of an act last year. But that's an interesting story all the way around. We're going through that right now with Flacco. Billick always says, they say they can never take the Super Bowl away from you, but boy, they'll try. And now he'll go down to Jacksonville, and he's just another guy there, right?
Right. The fans love Foles here in Philly because he was a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and as you know, they always love the backup quarterback. But I think they wish Nick well, obviously, and they're happy for him winning a Super Bowl for them. But I think just from dealing with the fans in social media, although Wentz there were some issues, there was some stuff written about him, which I think was mostly nonsense. The fans love Wentz. There's no doubt about it. You're talking about the second pick overall in 2016, and quite frankly, 2 years ago, I think he would have won the MVP had he not gotten hurt against the Rams. So that I think they've got a good thing going here in Philly, and it's kind of like you look at Baltimore and their success for decades, not just a Super Bowl, but for decades. I think Philly's trying to have similar success, and bringing in Joe Douglas was a really good move for the Eagles. And by the way, I'm told by multiple sources he absolutely 100% is the favorite going into the interviews this week to be the next Jets general manager, but we've got to see how these guys interview.
He is Adam Caplan, Caplan NFL, the way to find him. First time visiting here at WNST. Hope it's not the last time around here. And I guess last thing for you, around the league and where we are next couple of months and getting ready. Strengths in the league and differences in the league. It's hard to say the Patriots can't do it again, and every year we write this thing off. But as you see it, strengths in the league, who's helped them themselves the most in the offseason outside of the Browns that we talk about that? Is there a team that you think sort of lurking out there in the offseason and hasn't been talked about enough?
Yeah, it's funny. Every year I'm asked, okay, give me your surprise teams. I didn't get it. The 2 years ago when the Rams shocked us, they went from worst to first, and just they became almost an elite team that you could pretty much call them. I think the 49ers, most of the smart money was the Niners to be 8-8, 9-7 last season, but Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, Jerick McKinnon got hurt. I'm going to pick them. People stopped talking about them because they got hurt, and people think the worst of them. Well, they had a really good offseason. They addressed their problems on the defensive line. That's the team that I think, Nestor, this season makes a big jump over last year.
As long as the Redskins stink, we're all happy, right, Adam?
What's that?
As long as the Redskins stink, we're all happy, right?
Yeah. The Redskins are another animal. Oh, boy.
How about the Gruden's hot potato in the Hard Knocks? Isn't that great?
I want the Raiders to get it so badly, I cannot tell you, because I'll be at the training camp for 2 days. I go every year in Napa. It'll probably be the last year there in Napa. There's nothing like it, folks. Put it on your bucket list if you ever go out to Napa. If you're going this summer, try to get out there. It is unbelievable to see training camp in Napa, California.
Have you done the thing down at, was it the Homestead or, whatever the Saints and Belichick were doing, that thing down in the woods in Berkeley, West Virginia?
Well, no, I didn't do the one in West Virginia, but I do Santa Clara and Napa are about less than an hour and a half from each other. And obviously, from where I live, Baltimore is easy. The Eagles and the Ravens, by the way, I'll see you there because of the Ravens and Eagles are going to practice, I think, together. So
everybody tells me Latrobe's the place to go, even though I hate the Steelers.
Yeah, the Steelers. Yeah, it's easy to get there. You get a good vision. It's big. It's on that St. Vincent College campus. Yeah, that's a good one. My favorite one would be the Raiders. Seahawks is probably a close second because it's in the middle of nowhere. It's on a lake. It's really, really cool.
Hey, man, football's around the corner. We got mini camps, OTAs, all that stuff. Adam Caplan will have you covered if you're out on Sirius, if you're out on Twitter at Caplan NFL. And, hey, man, I had a John's roast pork for the first time. Can I bitch about Philly while I got you a minute? I waited my whole life. I went out of the way. I was a little early for Billy Joel. Yeah, I'm going back to talking to town. You know what I mean? I'm just going to keep it local, keep it right on Broad Street. That's going to be my thing.
Broad Street's the place to go, and then obviously the stadium complex. For those of you who drive down to Philly, I'm not a big Pat Steaks fan. I think it's good, but I think it's a little bit overrated. Tony Luke's is my place. That's right near the stadium.
I had never passed there until I came out of John's Roast Pork because I came up Oregon, and I saw South Philly. Everybody should drive through South Philly to see how unique it is. I told my wife, one day we're just going to get lost, park the car up there. Hopefully it doesn't get broken into again because that's been my experience in Philly. But, we're going to hit some of those coffee shops up there on Passayunk or something. So we'll see how it goes. Always a pleasure. Always good to see you. Have a great offseason. We'll see you down here for when the Ravens and the Eagles get together for the green and white and purple and black thing they're going to do, whatever it is in August. And we'll try to keep everybody safe. Great to visit with you, Adam. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Anytime.
Adam Caplan NFL up in the city of brotherly love in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where I just try to get in and out safely at this point. But, hey, I'm going for the Stones in a couple of weeks. I love Philly. Everybody knows that. I give it a hard time. Filthy, the whole deal. Manny Young, Grape Street, the whole deal. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube, WNSTV channel, and always out on the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 at WNST, Taos, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.